And as Alina said, that we're going to be looking at Scrum, product management, and looking at the power of the team. And ideally, I'll say ideally, some people can struggle, but I don't think you guys will, that the team is the most important part of this whole thing, right? As you're spending so much time together over the next 2 weeks, it is fundamental to the success of what you're going to be producing. Okay. Right. So, just a quick one. For you guys, that you've already put your hand up, said that some of you know Scrum, so on and so forth. Can I just see a show of hands again? Which ones know Scrum already? So I get a sense. Have any of you guys heard the word lean? Lean, great. Google Sprint, so on and so forth. Okay. For those who don't, that's fine. I'm going to take you through that, just give you an overarching view of what they are. And the ones that kind of know it. This could be a nice refresher in terms of the semantics. I'm not going to go into too much detail. All right. So, Agile in itself, it really helps people adapt and work faster and respond to change better. Okay. It's an overarching view of a collection of methodologies and principles as to how we can work together. Now, you're in your 2 teams. I'm going to give you a task now. You've got 5 minutes. You will all have to organise yourself by height and foot size. You've got 2 minutes to do this, height and foot size, and you stand in a line in that order, top to the lowest. The first team to get there wins. At some point throughout that time, I'm going to show you another one, and you'll have to change accordingly. Right? So 5 minutes. Did you get that? Organise yourself into height and foot size. Go. What did you have to do to make that happen? Yeah?
Compare everyone's hand size.
Yeah?
Over holding them up and then swapping.
Yeah? Okay, what else? Talk to each other? Yes? What else?
Made friends.
Made friends. Made friends. Great. You sure? Right? Anything else? You said something?
There's some people bullied other people because
okay.
Everyone bullies still others.
Okay. Was there someone on your team that spoke more than others to get you all organised?
Not really.
Was there someone who did that?
I thought about a 2D, like a 2D graphish. On one line, on the other line, you get height.
Like a thinking, okay,
But
good.
apparently it doesn't work like that.
Okay, fine. Good. Did you end up all talking together to get it done?
Yes.
Yeah, I think everyone had their own conversation.
Everyone had their own conversations.
I think that we had like a back group and a front group. Kind of trying
Back
to
group and the front group. Why did that happen?
Because you kind of knew if you were like near the front or the back. You
Right.
generally have like an idea.
So you start using your instincts.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? If there's nothing else, that's okay too. Great, thank you. Thank you. That exercise is really just to demonstrate a few things. It's all about your communication, right? And I hope you saw a little bit of that and how you can work in smaller teams and larger teams in that way. And it's all down to that. Okay, so you can relax and not stand in the line anymore. Or you can stay where you are. Just to remind you guys of what it is at a very kind of textbook level. When you go into what it is, what you're doing in real life, this will adapt and change for yourself based on your environment and based on the people that you're working with and what you aim to do. But fundamentally, this is the process that we're talking about. So, just explaining very, very lightly about the process and the roles. In each team you normally have a product owner or a product manager, depending on the setup of the business or the organisation. Now they're fundamentally your key person in the team, really. Everybody is part of the team, but this is the person that you go to for the vision. They're normally responsible for the revenue for the business, so they need to talk to you in terms of what goes in and outside of our backlog, which is then broken up into epics, features, stories and tasks, which I'll go into more detail after that. The team comprises of your product owner, your Scrum Master and the people who are gifted with coding and anything else. Some teams are cross-functional, so they're responsible to making sure that they are equipped and skilled to do more than just that. It could be UX, it could be full stack development, so on and so forth. The teams stick together all the way through. The processing what we call sprints. Those sprints can last from 1 week to maybe 6, maybe 4, maybe 8, depending on the business and what you want to achieve. In terms of this sprint process, you would normally have then your backlog, which then is decided upon with your product owner and your team in terms of what can be done in that sprint, in the time that you have allotted, how many things can we do in that time, which then creates your sprint backlog, which then is refined. Your Scrum Master is key too. So the Scrum Master is normally responsible for making sure that the team has everything that they need to get things done. Any blockers that are in the way, meaning if you come up to things that are hard as a team or in the process or in the product, they're there to help you work through them through facilitation and tasks and all the amazing tools that we have in our toolbox to make sure that you can get through to the end destination. We have the daily Scrum, which is your daily stand-up, which you probably used already in the past, which is your 15-minute daily stand-up, where you look at what is it that you did yesterday, what is it you're going to do today, and again, working with the Scrum Master and the product owners to look at blockers and how we can overcome those. Then you have your sprint review. Let's have a look. Is this a shippable product? It should be. Can we take it to market? Are we going to then make the revenue that the product owner is then accountable for to the business, so on and so forth? Retrospective. You've probably heard this. It could be, in lots of businesses it's called different things, but retrospective is when you look at how the team is doing in terms of its process, in terms of you as human beings, and also what did we produce? Is it giving us the value that the users want, and also for the business? That's why your product owner is very, very keen on this, because they're fundamentally their key bits and pieces there. So I'm going to invite Hannah now, who is a product manager, who knows the nuances in her day-to-day of what that could look like.
Every company is different and every team will be a little bit different. But I wanted to talk to you about the real principles behind some of the stuff that you see here and kind of what it's supposed to generate. So I guess to start from kind of a top level, there's never a shortage of good ideas, but there's always certainly a shortage of resources. And in these teams, that resource is generally people. So you'll come up with hundreds and hundreds of ideas, big ideas, small ideas, ideas that'll really take you forward, ideas that'll cost a lot. But you have to refine that. You have to think about what you can do. And so one way you can do that is thinking about continuously delivering incremental value. And so that means you break these ideas down into much smaller pieces. You assess what value you can get from each chunk. And then what you do is you do those pieces. They're very small, you do them quickly, they're light on resources. If they fail or don't work, it just doesn't matter. That's fine. And so what we tend to do here as we're going through this process, so we have as we go through this process, we are looking for an MVP. Does anyone know what MVP stands for? Yes.
I know about the product.
Yes. And the key to thinking about how to break your stories down, so we call them stories. We have an idea and then we break them down into what we call stories. The key to thinking about an MVP is that all the words go together. So you have minimum viable, which if you don't know means is it feasible or doable, can we do it? And then it's product. So if you do something really minimal that delivers no value, there's no point in doing that. If you do something, if you have viable, you can do it, but it's huge, that's also not going to fit into your definition of minimum viable product. And so the words go together. So the way that we can think about this, for example, if I want to get from A to B, can someone give me an example of how I'm going to go, if I'm going from A to B, how can I get there? Say I'm going to try and go to Shepherd's Bush Station. Can someone give me a way? How can I get to Shepherd's Bush Station? Yep.
You walk there.
Okay, walking, good. Anything else? Yep.
Go to White City Station in the central line.
Okay, good. I can commute. And what about vehicles? If it was pouring with rain and I wanted a vehicle. A bus, good. And what if it's not raining? So I can get a bus, I can get a train, a bike. Good, these are all, it's going to take me a long time to build these things, right? If I say, okay, I'm going to take a bus, to build a bus, huge amount of resources, I'm going to have to plan the bus, I'm going to have to check the schedule, all of this kind of stuff. And so that would be an example of where we've got an idea going from A to B, we've got a big idea building a bus. So in the meantime, say it's going to take 3 months to build a bus, what I could do instead is give someone a skateboard. So you have to skate every day. It's not ideal, you get wet in the rain, but you can do it, right? You have this minimum viable product. It's small, it's achievable, you get from A to B, it's not perfect, but we're delivering iterative value. Rather than saying to someone, look, you just got to walk in the rain for the next 3 months. Sorry about that, but in 3 months it'll be good. We're giving them a skateboard, okay? Because you can get there fast. Does that make sense in terms of minimum viable product? Clear example? Sort of. The next thing I wanted to say about this cycle, is this kind of what you had in mind? We haven't rehearsed this, by the way, just in case that wasn't clear. Was there anything else? I was going to talk about the retrospectives and sort of creating safety within teams.
Yes.
Okay, so what happens generally, I've seen this in development teams, you do your minimum viable product, you do the development, you get everything out, you ship it, it delivers value or it doesn't deliver value, and then you just keep going on and on and on. But in sort of extreme programming and in this sprint design, we have something called a retrospective. Oh gosh. We have what's called a retrospective. And that's a chance for the team to sit down and think about what went well and what didn't go so well, how we can make improvements, the patterns and the processes. And this is really, really important. And I've seen teams trying to skip this. Everyone's busy, you want to get on with it, you don't care, okay, it failed, the client was mad, whatever, well, we won't do it the next way. But what's actually really important about a retrospective is it gives the team the space and the safety to be able to talk to each other and to be able to bond as a team and to be able to be in a safe space to be like, oh, actually, maybe we could do this differently because I actually felt really stressed because I was working till 10 p.m. every night, maybe we'll do that differently. Whereas you have this retrospective because you can be sort of vulnerable and you can talk to your team members, and that's really, really helpful the next sprint you go on when you're mad working, and now you know that one person is really stressed working till 10 p.m, so you have everybody working till 8 p.m, and you've improved the process, and instead of being in the heat of the moment where people crack, you've got that vulnerability, and so that's really, that's a really important part of this that often gets skipped, so I would really encourage you to do that if you can, and I think you'll get some more hints and tips about how to do that. That was all the things I sort of wanted to say. Is that great? Is that what
Thank you very much, Hannah.
All right, no worries.
Thank you. When it comes to this, which you'll see in your work over the next couple of weeks, and in terms of what you did in your exercise just now, is what determines that goes into your product at the end of the day. It is looking at what is your minimum viable product and how you can look at doing that. We have one rule that can be taken here, which we've got must have, should have, could have, or won't have this time. So your must have is if you want to produce your minimum viable product, what are the fundamental things that you need in there to make it happen, to solve the challenge or the problem that you are out to solve in the first place. There's no point putting something in there that's not going to work for your users, right? Should have, it's important, but you know, it's not absolutely fundamental. Could have, you want it, you think it's the dream, it's amazing, but it doesn't have to be in there for your minimum viable product, or any project, that is. It won't have this time. It's not a key requirement, there's not strong agreement in order to have that thing in there, in the product, as you go to ship it or make it happen. So this is a really good marker as to how you can prioritise your requirements or features that go into your minimum viable product. So I'm just going to break this down a little bit. Hannah's given us some top line. Feel free to jump in.
Sure.
So a nice way of looking at this in terms of how your backlog is broken down. So your investment thing, this goes back to the challenge that you guys are going to be solving over the next couple of weeks. And it's your why. Your why, what is your stake in what it is that you're doing, is the most important thing as a team that you can hold into. So if things get hard, if things get tough, if you have a strong debate as to what goes in or out, always go back to why you're doing it. And where is the positioning for that project or product? What is the expected impact? Decide what is the impact that you want your product to have when it goes out to your users, your chosen users, your targeted users. Epics. This is more of your user goal, your user need. This is why knowing your target audience or the people you're about to ship your products to are the most important bits of information that you could know. It's really, really important that you put the work in so that you have the insight to know who your users are. And I think, Hannah, you could probably say more about this. Or not.
What insight into users?
Yeah, it's just stressing the point that that's probably the most important thing that we can look at in terms of where it's going. So we look at the investment theme and the epics as your challenge, the challenge you're about to solve, and everything under this, so your features, to how the system solves the problem. How is it going to do that? These are your steps to the solution. Your story. Hannah mentioned this earlier, which I'm going to go into in a second. So this is a slice of the feature, or basically of what can be done in the iteration. So these stories, these feature stories, goes into your backlog here, of which the product owner then says, right, these are the set of things that I'm going to be looking at in order to produce my MVP, of which you as a team then organise and decide, right, what am I going to be able to ship in 2 weeks? Forgetting this is a touch screen. What am I going to be able to ship in 2 weeks? We need to prioritise and make sure, based on our user needs, based on our challenge, that we can actually deliver real value in that time. And that is based on your prioritisation of all those things. So on and so forth. So, and then you have your tasks, so your development tasks are at the bottom. This is where your development team are literally drilling down and saying, right, okay, what do I actually need to code? What does that look like now to make all of this happen? Right, stories. I'll let you read that. This template, we'll probably speak more about this. This is a very, 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 very textbook template as has to write stories. When you say, okay, as the user that you have chosen, it could be a scientist or a mum, I want what the goal is, so that, for that reason. This is very, very top line, but I'm going to leave Hannah to speak to this in more detail.
it's very top line. I'm really just a big company. We drive a lot of revenue, and this is what we use. This, when I write stories, this is exactly how I do it. This is really, really valuable. And the most valuable word in this whole thing is your user, because you can build whatever you like. That's great. That's kind of what a hobby is. If you build something without thinking about your user, it's a hobby project, unless you're going to pay for it and you are the customer. You need to think about who's going to use it, who's going to pay for it, what value does your user, and especially your customer, because sometimes they're different things. I'm sure you guys are users of lots of things, but your parents are the customers, right? And that's what's most important, is thinking about what your user needs, what value they're going to derive. And this is really guiding. So at the top of all of our stories, we say, so in my rather rushed skateboarding example, we could have, say that person is actually one-legged. So as a one-legged person who needs to get from A to B, I want to get to the station so that I can travel. In the example I gave where I said, okay, great, let's build a skateboard, that's not going to work for that user. They're not going to use it. There is no value. And so you really need to think about how you can use this, this very short sentence to really how your story can deliver value.
Right, so very, very top line then in terms of the process. So you have your 6 points. Basically, pick your roles, right? And I would urge you, if you can, all the way through the next 2 weeks, is see if you can change the role. So you have the breadth of understanding of a product owner, the Scrum Master and the team, that you change those. So you have a view, you have a bit more of a view of what it's like to be all those different roles. And we can help you go through that over the next couple of weeks of what that actually looks like from the ground. Creating the product backlog based on what the challenge is, where everybody's going, what does that look like? Filled up with lots of user stories, as Hannah said. Planning your sprint. What is it that you're going to make sure that is done over the next couple of weeks? You have to make sure that the tasks are small enough that make sure that you can deliver value at the end of those 2 weeks. Get going. Crack on. Have your daily stands up. Make sure that everybody is aligned with your priorities and have a discussion. Review your work. As Hannah said, it is really, really important to make sure that you look back on what it is that you've created and where you can learn lessons for the future. Nothing runs perfectly. We don't live in a perfect world, but it is great if we all learn from everything. Whether it goes well, not well, that's the whole point. Then you can take it to the next sprint, or you can take it to the next company, or so on and so forth. That you bring that learning forward. Right, harnessing iterations. Now, some of you have already worked with iterations, and for those who haven't, I just wanted to bring this to the fore a little bit more as to why iterations are important and why it's okay not to get it right first time. That's the whole point, that we learn over time. And that's why I love working with Scrum and Agile as a theme, so to say. Right, gosh. We have another methodology called Lean. This is very different in terms of, it's the other way around, that we're looking at waste. So you're saying, right, in terms of looking at it is, what are we going to produce for the user, make sure they get everything they need in at least amount of time. We're saying here, right, how can we take things away? So how can we eliminate things that are not needed? Which is a slightly different thinking. And the process is slightly different, which I feel like you'll probably start to look at this more, which is more attached to design thinking. When we look at who we are designing for, very similar to what it is with Scrum, what are the requirements, what's the concept, how are we going to design what we're about to code up, and how are we going to validate it. So our tests, are we going to be doing A/B testing? Are we going to be going to our selected users to make sure that what we're actually building is the right thing for them? You may have heard of Google Sprints as well. Now, what I want to say about is that every business does things slightly differently. And the beauty about Scrum is it is, or Agile in that way, they are frameworks to which things can get done, right? And the way that you do work will sometimes evolve over time. And a lot of businesses have done this to make sure that it runs in the way that works for them and their people, right? There's no set, right, we're going to do it this way. It is, right, let's learn as we go. Let's find out how we really work based on this framework. And Google has done just that in terms of that. In terms of mapping, sketching, decide, prototyping and testing, which is really nice. Because they start from the end and say, right, what is it that I want to do? Very similar to the end goal. Who is it for? How do I create that journey? Let's sketch it out. Let's come up with as many ideas as possible. Heard Elena mention about Crazy Eights. It sounds like you're going to go through that. I won't be going through that, but that's all part of the same thing. Then you decide what is the best solution. You prototype it and you test. You test based on the users that you're going for. So it's very, very similar, not the same, but it's similar. The thinking is there. It's all about the user. When you don't have the user in the room, it's a massive assumption. And this is just to demonstrate that different companies do evolve over time in terms of their thinking process. The Google Sprints that I just showed you then has evolved. It hasn't stayed the same. In 2013, it was understand, diverge, decide, prototype, validate. 2000, that. They start like this. Okay, so just bear that in mind. 2010, that's what the homepage looked like. You can see it's changed slightly. Okay, it's still got the fundamentals, you know, the old school logo, video, you know. They now have 3 options, 3-day pass, premium. You know, before they didn't have any of that. It was just, this is who we are. Contact us if you want a job about beta test. I think I joined when it was the beta test. I was enjoying free music until they went live, properly went live, right? And this is still beta, but they're still deciding who they are as a company. You can see that, right? Flash forward a little bit further, 2016. Okay, they've changed over time. They've got a new logo. Didn't look like that, right? So they've had a rebrand. They've decided who they are a little bit more. Music is now for everybody. It didn't say that before. So they've now got a vision. They're now communicating where they want to be as a business. 2018. Okay, they've changed their look and feel. They've gone through another little bit of design, but they've tried to home in on the core features of the actual site itself. So really, it's just to demonstrate and show you that the big boys always start from somewhere, and it's always small. Okay. The power of team. Now, I'd all like you to stand up. Our core. Your core for now and your core for the future. Right? What it brings to businesses, what it brings to life, what it brings to our everyday challenges. Okay? So in order for that to happen in a really cohesive way, you guys working as a team is fundamental for everything. Absolutely fundamental. You work together, not against each other. Otherwise nothing will work. Okay? Right, the power of team. I would like you to split up into pairs. Thank you. Pairs, pairs, pairs. Have you got your pairs? You acknowledge each other? Yeah? Fight over who has who. Boy or girl, it doesn't matter. Fantastic. Right. Now, listening. Listen to people. I listen to people. But do we really? Okay. So this exercise is really just to demonstrate how much we listen to others and how it feels when we don't. Okay? And what that means to really listen to each other as a team, right? So we can get into debate, into discussions and respect, so therefore we can create the amazing things that we want to create in the future. So in your teams, okay, I've got about 5 or so minutes on this. One of you is going to take someone who is listening, right? The person who's going to be listening, and the other person is going to share what they're passionate about, right? So whatever your passion is, or it could be the next idea that you have for your MVP or so on and so forth, right? What's going to happen is the other person who's listened to the other person is what they're passionate about is going to listen to that passion for about a minute. After a minute, I'm going to ask you to swap, and then you're going to do everything in your power not to listen to that person. So you're explaining what you're passionate about, and you're not going to listen to that person. I want you to take it to the absolute extreme of not listening to someone and listening to somebody. And then we're going to talk about what the impact that was on you and what actually happened when you were heard and when you was not heard. Okay? So, this quickly decide amongst yourself who's going to talk about their passion and who's going to be the listener. What was it?
You should have talked louder.
Sorry?
You should have talked louder.
You should have talked louder. Note to self, right? What else? What else? Yeah?
Approved.
Sorry?
You feel approved.
You feel approved. Right, what else? What did you notice?
Team.
You were a team.
We were prepared.
What else did you notice?
We were power back.
Okay. When you were not listening, and I've got a feeling I'm going to have way more answers on this one, right? What did you notice? You're shaking your head. You felt guilty. Okay. What else? Sorry?
No, that's just too nice.
You're too nice. Okay. What else?
No connection.
No connection. Did you feel a connection when you were being heard? Don't all nod at once. Yes. Yes? Right? Any more on not listening?
It was slightly frustrating because then you forgot yourself what you were talking about because you were focusing on the other person trying not to listen.
Right. Okay, so you're focused on what they're doing, not yourself. Right. What else? Did you like it?
No.
Right? So, just think about that over the next couple of weeks. Right? Heard versus not being heard. Because that's really, really important. Okay? When you're creating new things for the future, and you guys, you're the next wave of amazing people coming through. So, it's really important that you have that listening for each other so you can really grow from each other and learn from each other. Because if you don't, you won't. Okay? So, just to look at this. So, tips in terms of the power of team, which you probably know some of this already, but I think through this exercise, hopefully this has enhanced the feeling and the empathetic nature of that. Everyone must be heard, everybody, right? I know we all get into waves of shyness, so we might not want to, and look at each other and come forward. But it is important for everybody to be able to feel safe to do that. And you, as a team, can only be able to make people feel comfortable and safe with each other in order for that to happen. Play to your strengths and do things that help you grow. Don't get stuck in a box. Yeah, I'm a great coder, I'm going to stay here. Explore other things. Help each other to do that as well. It's really, really important that you help each other to grow in other ways. And let people play the dance of trying something new. Value your interactions with everyone and learn from each other. In the industries and the game that we work in, That's all you can do. And that's why Scrum and Agile in so many ways, and all these big companies are taking this on, is because it gives you the framework in order to do that. It gives you the support to enable to learn. Find common ground to solve the challenge together. The whole point of the team is that you stay together. Individualism doesn't really exist in this paradigm, and it's known and proven to work that if you stay together, you produce more and produce amazing things. Always support each other along your journey. I love what you said, she's too nice. That's great feedback, but how could she improve?
Get real. Don't just say, oh, I don't want to ask them for scissors because they might distract them on their very important work, and I'm like, they aren't even serving anyone. This was at this
More important things.
like sitting around.
So if she's up for it, the next time she has a situation like that, she'll be a different person, right? She'll handle it differently, and that's the whole point, right? So this is really good. If things get hard, remember your why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. Okay? That will always keep you in touch with what you're doing. And the why has to be so strong that it gives you the energy to keep moving. So the challenges that you're doing right now are amazing. So the challenges that you've got hopefully will be enough to keep you going, and I know they will, because they are really good challenges. And to find your purpose and so on, your forthrightness to see that through. And then always ask questions and always ask for help. There's so many people that just will not ask for help because of whatever reason, whatever's holding them back to look big or, whatever the story is. It's okay to ask for help. That's why team is so important, because if you're close enough to each other, asking for help won't mean anything. It's just, right, we need to get this thing done that is over here. I need help over here so that we can get this thing done over there, which is more important than my stuff here. Okay? So having something that's bigger than yourselves drive you, which is what you have. Now, you can sit down for this if you want. But thank you, that was really good. So I'm going to be very light on tools, because some of you probably know a lot of this already. But in terms of tools, there are lots of tools that we all work with to make things happen on this level. Trello, Jira, Basecamp, you've probably heard of some of these already. Google Docs, InVision, GitHub, Slack, Smartsheet, so on and so forth. A lot of these are project management product tools, and there's probably more in your field as well that you use. But I believe for the 2-week stint that we're doing here, we're going to be using Trello, which is a good project management tool, but also a really good way of organising your epics, your features, your stories, and so on and so forth. As far as I know, you guys have had a look at this already. This is a good way of doing it. The standard is to do, doing, done, as you've probably experienced already. But as time goes along, as businesses evolve, some of these boards do expand out to other things depending on what the process is internally. You can do it physically. My work colleague. It can be done physically. I prefer physical, but a lot of businesses like digital. And it's a fun way of getting things done and so on and so forth. So it can be done either way. Slack. Slack is good to discuss things online, especially if you're remote. But as you'll be working together as a team, as a unit, together most of the time, hopefully, then face-to-face is priority and gets a thumbs up from me, and just making sure that you have that unit and understanding. And then you've got GitHub, as I'm sure you know already. So that wraps up